Yeah, today I'm going to tell you something that almost nobody in scholarship has the courage to even consider. Every time you hear people, they argue about Christianity, they start with this assumption that Jesus was the center of the story and that everything else was built outward from him. But that's not what the earliest sources actually show. If you push all the noise aside and look at the earliest traceable text, the oldest identifiable voice is not Jesus. It is Simon of Samaria. And the document that captures this is his teaching is called the Great Declaration. I want to say that again so it sinks into your minds. The Great Declaration is the real gospel. It is the earliest surviving proclamation of awakening, liberation, and cosmic identity from the first century. And everything that came later, including the Gospels, was built on reshaping that early message into something safer. It's got to be more manageable for Rome when they create a religion. Now these people will say, it's controversial, fine, living with it. Everything that challenges power is controversial. But look at the evidence. Irenaeus, Hippolytus, both preserved long quotations from Simon. They are hostile to him. They are trying to attack him. But the funny thing about hostile sources is that when they quote your enemy, they usually quote him correctly because they want to defeat him. And why did they quote Simon saying? He says, I appeared as the Father in Samaria, as the Son in Judea, and the Holy Spirit among the nations. That's the earliest triadic identity statement in Christian history. It predates the Father, the Son, Spirit language in the Gospels. It predates Nicaea. It predates every creed. So who copied who? Rome copied Simon. Rome stole the structure from the river teacher and built a new religion around it. And the Great Declaration reads like a gospel stripped of the later miracle stories, parables, and theological packaging. It is a cosmic awakening text. It is a river truth text. It is a proclamation of a man who taught transformation, not obedience. And that alone tells you why Rome buried him. Let me make this point very clear for people who like to pretend there is some ancient, stable Judaism behind all this. There was no Judaism when Jesus lived. There was a temple cult in Jerusalem. It was a cult among many. There was no religion called Judaism at the time. It did not even have a Torah the way we know it. It did not have rabbis that we know. Rabbinical Judaism is a 2nd century creation long after Rome burned the temple down. And scholars know this. They write whole books about it. Jacob Neusner talks about the invention of the categories of Judaism. Shane Cohen explains very clear that Judaism as a religion is something that congeals after the 1st century when the temple system collapses. Before that, the word Jew refers to a regional identity, not a religion. You can quote him. You can quote it. You can quote Neusner today. You can quote Seth Schwartz. None of them describe a religious system in the time of Jesus. They describe a temple cult, a political, and a contested one at that. So when modern scholars insist that Jesus was Jewish, they are protecting a later religious identity backwards. They are taking something from the 2nd century and slapping it into the 1st century and calling it history. But the sources tell us Jesus is consistently in conflict with the temple cult. He attacks the priests. He rejects sacrifices. He ignores purity codes. He criticizes scribes. He refuses to obey the very things that define the temple identity. That is not someone belonging to the temple cult. That's someone who is openly rejecting it. And here's the hilarious part nobody wants to talk about. Every time someone brings up Essenes as some magical missing link between Jesus and Judaism, it's like watching someone insist unicorns are horses with identity issues. The Essenes are a made-up group. There's no archaeology for them. None. Not a single site, not a single artifact, not a single independent text. Only 3 writers, Josephus, Philo, and Pliny, and all 3 contradict each other. They didn't describe the same group. Modern scholars had to stitch all 3 together like a Frankenstein monster just to pretend this group existed. Then, once they invented the Essenes, they magically declared the Qumran was an Essene headquarters, even though the scrolls never say that. Not one scroll calls itself Essene. Not one scroll describes Essenes. Scholars force the identity on to the site and then circularly use the site to prove that the Essenes. What is that? That is not scholarship. That's theology with a damn footnote. The Dead Sea Scrolls do not predict Jesus. They do not mention Jesus. They do not mention John. They do not mention Simon. They do not mention Dositheus or Menander. Nothing in the scrolls points to the gospel story. They are proto-Christian. They are not proto-Christian. They're not proto-Jewish. They are sectarian political literature written by competing priestly groups fighting for control of a collapsing religious world. Now let us move back to Simon, because that is where the real story is. Simon teaches through water imagery. Simon teaches cosmic identity. Simon teaches awakening from ignorance. And what do we see in the earliest layers of the Gospels? Water baptism, river language, the sky tearing open, the Spirit descending. None of that is Jewish temple theology. That is all river cosmology. The Assyrian thought that is a system Jesus follows in the earliest Markan narrative before later editors wrapped him in Jewish identity to stabilize Christian claims to antiquity. This is where the comedy comes in. You could almost imagine a modern scholar sitting there saying Jesus was definitely Jewish and definitely followed the law and definitely identified with a religion that did not even exist yet. I wonder why they keep saying that. I wonder what they like. And you just look at them
I like money.
like someone watching a guy insist that his imaginary friend owes him money. You can say, let's talk about the promised land. Nonsense, baloney, okay? It's just made up. It's all made up. You cannot call Jesus a member of a religion that had not been created yet. That is like calling Julius Caesar a Roman Catholic. That is like calling Abraham Lincoln an American Republican in the modern political sense. The categories do not exist. They do not mean the same thing. So the next question becomes, it's very simple. If the temple cult is not Judaism and Judaism did not exist and Jesus rejects the temple cult and the scrolls do not mention him, then where does he belong? It's easy. He belongs in the river. He belongs with John. He belongs with the same tradition that Simon and Dositheus and Menander continued. Simon is one who articulates the cosmic identity formula. Simon is the one who speaks of liberation from the rulers of this world. Simon is the one who frames ignorance as a root of human suffering. Simon is the one who teaches a river-based awakening, and the Great Declaration is the earliest written form of that message. That is the real gospel, not edited temple-friendly, Roman-friendly version that appears generations later. How can anyone possibly believe this? But they do. They'll continue because they were told that Moses is real, Abraham is real,
Okay,
but
they're
they're
talking about
really,
fictional
and you don't
characters.
understand it
Fictional
because you still believe in
characters.
and these people that come to you. Oh, wow, it's incredible. They come to you, right? And they say, you're the devil. The devil. Hold on. Because I'm a real person. I don't sit around and pretend. I don't play for you. I'm giving you information that they won't give you. Why? Because they like too much.
I like money.
Yeah.
Okay?
How many?
That's the real truth. It's because why do you say Jesus is Jewish all the time?
Why do you keep
Exactly.
saying that?
Because they
That's
pay me
why.
every time I do.
Because when you sit there and you've got to constantly reiterate it like these scholars do, you know why? Because they like.
I like
that's how
money.
things work.
Yeah.
How
So
many-
here, please subscribe to the channel, like that. And for God's sakes, use your mind and stay wise as a serpent. Veritas lux mea. The truth is my light.
Veritas lux maya. Truth is my light.